Mother Clare, we just finished a mission trip to Ethiopia, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself, your position in your community, and we'll talk about how you started this work.
Sure. So I have been a Franciscan Sister of the Renewal since 1998, and in 2017 I became we say community servant or general servant of the community. So my role is to serve the rest of the sisters and to keep everybody bonded together, essentially.
And then you started these trips 5 years ago. How did that happen?
Okay, so the Bishop of the Apostolic Vicariate of Harar, Bishop Angelo Bogano, is a Capuchin, and it's a Capuchin vicariate. Because when I say vicariate, it's just a stage before becoming diocesan. So this jurisdiction of the church in Ethiopia is not yet a diocese, but it has a bishop that oversees it. And the Bishop Angelo Bogano, Capuchin, came to the United States, came to New York, came to the convent, and invited us to come. And when we consider visiting, first of all, and then working there, and even opening a convent there. So at his invitation, and actually at his presence, because he came to New York and really made the pitch, personally, I really had to consider that, and so ultimately, obviously, we said yes to that and started missioning to the vicariate.
So he was in New York for other business?
Well, he was in the United States raising funds and visiting other places and visiting the seminary. But also to try to elicit support, missionary support also for the vicariate.
And the work and cares of your community is apostolic preaching and service of the poor.
Exactly. And that was part of it. His request was not for us to come and do a food handout or dig wells or do any of the social services, which, there are a lot of very good organizations, international organizations that are doing those sorts of things and putting a lot of money into that sort of thing, the digging of wells and supporting the poor and different social services. But because he was asking us for evangelization, formation, and renewal, like the very aspects of our charism, that's what made me say yes.
Oh, okay. And did he specify for the priest? Or just...
Initially, he was general. He was, we were asking him, Bishop, what do you want? What do you want from us? Well, first it was just to come. So on the very first trip, it was really driving the landscape of his vicariate, which is a vast landmass. I can't tell you the square miles of it, but it's enormous. So first it was just coming and visiting the parishes, seeing the people, and getting a sense really what are the needs. But then in speaking with him, he made it very clear that he was looking for evangelization, formation, and renewal for the priests and for the families. And then over the years, we've honed into the priests, specifically because it's the greatest possible impact.
And there's like 4 or 5 vicariates.
I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I'm not 100%. It might be 5 or 6, but they're all vicariates and none of them are dioceses. So the Roman Catholic Church is definitely the minority by far, as you know.
It's predominantly Ethiopian Orthodox and then Muslim.
Exactly.
Catholics less than 1%.
Right. And that's the other thing too. I mean, we see it as a way to support the church and its kind of its poorest state. I mean, the Pope Francis talks about the periphery, and I mean, if the Apostolic Vicariate of Harar is not the periphery, I don't know what is. I mean, it's poor even in the sense that it's a minority, in the sense that it's economically poor, but also in the sense that it's like ecclesially poor. It's not even recognized, so in all those ways, it's just like the poorest of the poor.
Yeah. And just even, I think we Google mapped a drive from
Diradowa, where we just flew out of,
So like, the Google map from Diradowa to Addis, I think is like 210 miles, but it takes 9 hours to drive that, so it's not easy to get around. And how many priests roughly, like there's the Franciscan, there's a Capuchin community there, vicariate presence. But do you know how many, dozens of priests?
Yeah, we had almost all of them on our days of formation. We had them all except the 2 that are studying in Rome and the one that had to stay at the cathedral. So So I think there are 18, if I'm not mistaken. There are 18 priests.
And then you've been to just about all of their parishes almost, and some of them are very primitive, I guess you say, like no running water and like pieces of tin, like a tin shed.
Yes. It's incredible, honestly. I mean, if you think, to me, it's extremely moving because you see the response of the church in the sense that where the Catholics are, they do their best to establish some kind of outpost, some sort of church. And so, the Catholics are far flung over this vicariate, over this massive, swath of land, and they have priests scattered, sprinkled, throughout those locations. So on the tops of mountains, if there's a village, and on the sides of mountains and ravines, and some of the conditions are, they're the same conditions of the people. So yes, without electricity in some cases. On one parish we visited, the people walk an hour to get their water. Their water source is an hour away. I mean, imagine that on a daily basis. It's just incredible to see. And so the priests live, for the most part, the same conditions that the people do. For the most part. I mean, they do. It is a step up. There's no question about it. I mean, their economic status is a step up from the people. They have an income and they're respected, but they're living in very remote places under very difficult circumstances. There's no question.
Yeah. As a country of about 120 million, and I mean, Ahmedabad's a big city, but I think most of the population is farming, agricultural.
Right.
So, and you had two missionary priests from Spain there. Father Paul was pretty young. Mm-hmm. Father Ramon was about 50. But I was impressed by their witness to go and make sacrifices, because it's not an easy life,
Yeah. And, I find them very inspiring as well, because, especially because they come from a Western culture, and so they know what they're sacrificing, whereas, what they're accustomed to. So it's pretty remarkable, pretty inspiring, and also to learn the language. I mean, that's just, Hameric and Oromo, these are difficult languages to learn. And even in the case of Father Paul, where he is, most people don't even speak Hameric. There's a local dialect that he's having to learn and to be able to really communicate with the people. So it's a heroic effort to be able to serve.
Yeah, and one thing, they have a lot of beautiful marble, granite, stone tiles. We went to one of these country churches the other day, and I was impressed. The sanctuary actually had marble in it, which is more than most of the churches back home. And it's amazing they got all those materials in there to build a church. But that first trip you went, it was mostly like seeing the country, but you also did like Youth 2000s.
Well, what we did, the very first trip was really just seeing. So it was the bishop himself drove myself and another sister, and we visited virtually every parish on that trip. And we didn't do any ministry, but we were meeting people, meeting the priests, getting just a feel for everything. It was just overwhelming. The second trip, which was the same year, so that was January 2018, and then I went back in August for a month, and we did 8 Eucharistic retreats in different parishes. But we did a huge Youth 2000 style or Bread of Life style retreat in the middle of the time. So that we had probably 600 or 700 young people for that retreat, and they gathered from all over the vicariate, some of them walking, for a day or two to arrive at it. And it was an amazing experience. One to pray with them, and we would alternate doing the music. So we would do some of our music, which would be kind of standard American praise and worship music, and they would do their music, and we'd go back and forth, and we'd give the talks, and we would have to be translated into 2 languages, so we had to keep them very short, very concise. But it was a great way to just be with them, just to be with them and pray with them. And so Eucharistic adoration, while it's known, had been known mainly in the sense of like for benediction or for like a small procession or something. But the idea of prolonged, silent adoration seems to be less familiar. So that's, I think, part of what we were bringing was that spirituality of a more contemplative prayer, and the personal love of Jesus present in the Blessed Sacraments. That's why we did Eucharistic retreats everywhere, to bring that specific message. Also because, that's something that where we differ from the Orthodox, although our faiths are very, very, obviously we come to, as Pope John Paul II said, it's the church breathing with both lungs. I mean, but they wouldn't have the tradition of adoration in the Orthodox Church. So we're trying to emphasize for the Catholics there the things that are uniquely their own, part of their unique heritage and identity. And it was super well received. I mean, and it was neat to do. And that was one of our trips then following that. One was to bring monstrances over so that they could continue that kind of worship and devotion. We brought 10. We brought 10 monstrances over.
Amazing you fit that in the luggage.
It was amazing. We got them through customs. I didn't have to pay a penny, which I didn't even consider until after everyone was asking me, like, how'd you get through customs? I was like, I didn't even think that would be a problem, but you're right. I don't know. God made a way for us. The Blessed Mother paved a way for us. But yeah, we brought monstrances, and that's what we do each year. We try to bring religious articles that maybe are needed and are very hard to get. And also this year, like especially with the formation books, catechisms, we always bring rosaries, things that are harder to come by, in East Africa.
You personally, did you, like that, after that first kind of scouting trip, you just said, yeah, this is it, or was there still questions? Or was that...
That's a good question, Father Mark. That's a great question, because, the first trip, what was clear to me after the first trip is that we couldn't open a convent there immediately. Like that much was clear. And here we are, a very small community, and we're already spread relatively thin. I mean, we have a mission in England, as you know, and in Ireland with Sisters in Rome. So we're spread pretty thin. And so I didn't think the Lord was asking that of us, to open a mission halfway around the world. Also, it would be a mission where we wouldn't even have our own brothers nearby, which typically, not always, not in every case, but so on many levels, it seemed more than what God was asking of us. But I said that doesn't mean we have to say no to this bishop. I mean, we can say yes in a different way. We can mission here. We can go back and forth and serve without opening a house. That's the most I felt I could offer. And I always feel like if you can say yes and you don't sense the Holy Spirit telling you to say no, the invitation itself could be coming from God, the invitation itself. And that's how I felt, especially because he was Capuchin. This bishop was a Capuchin. And as you know, our origins are Capuchin. We were founded by Capuchins. And so I thought, you have this Capuchin bishop who looks like he stepped out of a storybook. I mean, he looks like the Capuchins of old, the saints of old. And he's working so hard for the formation of his people. And he wants the renewal, our charism. How could I say no? Like, what would Father Benedict, Father Andrew roll over in their grave if I say no to this Capuchin? It's like my uncle knocking on the door saying, will you come serve? I was like, I have to say yes to this. So the discernment, I mean, each year it's a struggle. I mean, to gather a team of people that are willing to come halfway around the world and serve in a very isolated place. And you wonder, like, what the heck kind of an impact is this really going to have? It's not easy. But I do feel like if you can say yes, say yes. So that's why I keep... And because it's honed in now for the priests, in this case, I think of it as the principle of spiritual multiplication. Like, we're a very small team that go in. Jesus picked a very small team of people, his 12 apostles, and they went out. So we go in and we minister to 15 or 16 priests. But we don't have to be translated. They understand English because their seminary formation is in English. So the impact is greater because of that. We don't have to be translated to 2 or 3 times. And then the hope is that when they're filled up with what they're receiving by the power of the Holy Spirit, and these times please God, then they can go back to their parishes and let it overflow again to their catechists and their family. So that's principle of spiritual multiplication. So I feel like maybe God is using us in that way, or could use us in that way, and I want to be open to that.
Just like maybe generally speaking, spiritually, you're trying to do a good work, and there's going to be maybe temptations not to do it. There's some opposition or something to overcome. And, I mean, you feel like you've grown in your faith doing this?
Oh my goodness. Yes, that's a great question, Father Mark, because if you just think about it in a rational way and kind of write out a pros and cons list of, should I go halfway around the world and risk my life potentially to do a very, the pros and cons list would not convince anyone to do this thing. And I always call it my Ethiopian free fall, which I do every year when I feel like, spiritually speaking, like the Lord is asking of me my yes, my fiat. Will I say yes to this mission, even when I don't have a team, when I've had no one has said yes yet, because I have to, of course, I need 3 priests to do it, and another sister to come with me at a minimum.
Yeah.
And so in my own prayer, I just make my prayer my yes. Lord, I say yes to this mission. I say yes to your church in Ethiopia. I say yes to you, ultimately, with no other yeses. And I always feel every year he evokes that from me for my own spiritual growth. Like he wants to hear my fiat without any supports of anything else. Will I say yes to him? And that's why I call my Ethiopian free fall. Like I jump off the cliff, there's no parachute, there's nobody else, there's no nothing. And then little by little, friars like yourself will say yes to the mission. But that time between my own yes and yeses of others, I think for me in my own relationship with the Lord is a beautiful moment. Like it's a moment for us to say, like, I trust you and I will say yes to you. And I can't wait to see how you're going to work out the rest of the details of this mission. Yeah.
And I, back home in the United States, oftentimes, like if you give a retreat to a group of diocesan priests, usually the guy is like a scholar, an academic, or has written books, And that's kind of what I was thinking. It's like, what do I have to bring to talk to priests? And I remember I remember probably like 5 times I gave it them asking, are you sure about stuff? But I was thinking, it's a very remote area and it's not easy, to go and do the mission, I don't think. But I guess the thing that came to me was said, well, like, he's like you said, he's looking for somebody to say yes. And it's like, well, we're the guys that said yes, so that's why we're here.
Exactly.
It's not that we're the best or the Dominican scholar.
Yeah.
It's been a lesson, to me. I was telling you, I had heard it was a wonderful story, and I can't remember the context of it, but the message to this one person was, Jesus had given him this word. He said, I want you to start saying yes to me. Because he wanted them to do some kind of bigger work. And he needed some yeses from him on stuff, And I thought, because I know Mother Angelica talked about this all the time. She said we talk ourselves out of things instead of doing,
exactly.
Reasons.
Exactly. And that really came up big time. I mean, that comes up with every trip, of course, just because of the remoteness and the just what goes into traveling that far. But during COVID, even more so. And I can't even, if I counted the number of people who said to me, what? Like, you really think you're going to go to Ethiopia in the middle of like a COVID? But it was like, what? My approach is go forward, take the step, and let the world cancel it. Let somebody else can. And if God doesn't want it, we saw that things can be canceled,
Right.
And I thought, and I think it's a great way to live. And Mother Angelica, like I really admire her, and I think she's like the total icon of this way of living, and I admire that. I want to live that way, where it's like you just put one foot in front of the other. And I mean, if it evaporates in front of you, if the plan, the project, the event evaporates in front of you, well, let it evaporate, but it won't be evaporating because I said no, or I wouldn't take the step, or I wouldn't take the risk, or I wouldn't, take the free fall. Like, let it evaporate on its own. And I said, that's the way I want to live. And we were able to go right in the middle of COVID. Nobody got sick. Nobody got detained. Nobody got, it just shows that, God's providence is a real thing.
Yeah. I was talking to Father Michael, and I was asking him about the Ethiopian Catholic Church, the Catholics, and he told me, he said there's a lot of references to God, like in their language and how they speak. And, some people are just, they don't have a storehouse of food. I mean, they're just like that day, they're getting food enough to eat. So they have this radical dependence on God. And it's reflected in His name coming up. Like if God permits this, if God allows this, it's in there a lot. But we went to this remote, what was the name of the parish we went to?
In Chilenko, St. Peter and Paul's, Abagino's parish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't speak the language, and I just had like this little interaction with some of the women, just trying to they were just telling me their name, and I was just struck by I mean, how much water do they have just to be clean, just to wash themselves and everything. And it's just like just things we take so much for granted, but they were happy and joyful in a very real sense. We're smiling and kind of they would say something, and that was I thought that's like such a powerful gift to the church. I think in this community is like they're living a radical poverty that trusts God, and they're happy. I mean they have obviously incredible, terrible struggles, I'm sure, but they're at mass and happy. You go to a lot of churches and people aren't that happy across the world. But,
it's a great point. It's a great point, and it was so great to hear you preaching up there and to say that to them. Your joy witnesses to me, and the applause, and when they burst into applause at that point. And I thought, that's it. You're right. I mean, the joy was overflowing, and it's really awesome to see. The people are close to God in their own way. They really are. It's a religious culture. That's the thing. It's a very religious culture.
What is some of the fruit that you feel like is coming for the priest? Because you've done over 5 years of missions with the priest.
Well, little by little, as we form relationships and come back year after year and offer some basic classes, and it's really the time with them. It's the three things we do are, we have the morning, as the morning of classes, the afternoon of adoration, and the opportunity for that one-on-one spiritual direction. And so, they're really, it's like a retreat with formation time all in one. And one thing I see is even just their own, they're entering into the spirituality. Like one thing we're trying to do is get across the idea that if we are transformed, if we become saints, each of us, if I become a saint in my vocation and each of these priests become saints in their vocation, everything flows from that. Everything flows from holiness. Everything flows from transformation. That it's not just an idea out of a book. Like we have the lives of the saints to show us that if I will let myself be transformed, fruit will come. And I see their desire for transformation has increased. Like their desire to be in adoration, their desire to meet with their shepherds, as we call them, their spiritual directors, you priests who serve on the mission, to enter into the classes, to take it home. Like I sense an increased desire for that, for transformation, for holiness. The other thing is identity. We've really honed in on priestly identity and Catholic identity, as opposed to, national identity. And that's I think a big thing, and not just in Ethiopia, other places too, where we can identify more with my Americanism versus my Catholicism, and that I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ before anything else. And so we've been hammering that home, and I think I see glimmers of a shift. I mean, who knows? There's a lot of faith involved in all of this too. I think I'm scattering seed out there, and I hope something's growing, but how can you know in 2 weeks? But I think I see glimmers even in their desire to try to emphasize, and this is a great desire of the bishop, that the priests, the priests are priests, and they're their own identity. They're Roman Catholic priests. They're not Orthodox priests. They're not. So they don't look like the Orthodox priests. They don't look like the Muslim leaders. They look like who they are. And so I see them wearing clerics more, and we brought them stoles, use stoles more, use appropriate vestments more. I mean, there's always that balance of you're in the poorest place possible. They don't have everything they need. So there's room for that. It's not about meeting the letter of the law. It's not about that at all. It's about identity and the desire to reflect your own identity, and not a need to just mimic the others around, that they can be content and proud of their own faith in a place where they're the total minority, an extreme minority.
And I thought your conferences up there were very powerful. It really struck me how vitally important that is, obviously, but just in terms of helping any group of people to renew, to get the prayer right. I was thinking of things I need to do better and sharpen up, and we all need to be probably evangelized to some degree on that and learn more and more. But I just saw those conferences as just kind of like the bedrock of the whole thing. You know, like you need the spiritual thing besides got to be solid. You can talk about human formation, academic formation, or pastoral formation or something. But the spiritual thing is what drives right, the whole thing. So I thought that was very good. I mean, if that piece is moving, it seems like the other stuff's going to work.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that too, and the chance to do that, and it's a chance, to emphasize that, to provide something, and it's because that's what is transforming me. I mean, that's I'm in the process of transformation, like we all are, and I just know that's where it is. That's where it is. Yeah.
Have you met some people, other missionaries there over the years? I don't know, groups of sisters or something that touched you or witnessed to you?
I'm really moved. I'm moved by the priests themselves, honestly. I have met different religious communities there, different Ethiopian sisters groups, and it is always, I'm really moved by the MCs. I mean, the Missionaries of Charity are there. They have, I think, 11 houses in all over Ethiopia. The work they do there is, like it is everywhere in the world, so inspiring. I mean, it's one thing to go in and live there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We were there for 3 weeks. But to live there for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, I mean, like, so I'm super inspired by them. But the priests themselves, I mean, you know, they to see their, like visiting Abagino, you know, just at Chilinko, and as we left him there after our weeks of formation, and then we go to his parish, we celebrate the Mass with him and have a meal with him, and then, you know, his desire is to be a good priest for his people, and just to see that shining through him, and you know, where we go back to our electricity and our, you know, running water and all the healthcare we could ever want, and he remains there in a very remote, difficult circumstance. So I'm really edified by the priests themselves.
Yeah, it was great. Father Gino was there, Abba Gino. He struck me too, like his pastoral fatherly presence, working, just directing the people, directing the liturgy, and interfacing between the bishop and the people, and all that. It was powerful. You know, you could see, you know, he had this fatherly role, and the people respected it.
Yeah.
They gave him respect, and I felt that from the other priests too. They had, I don't know if the right word is respectful, but you know, they just they gave us a lot of credence, you know, to say things, talk to them, and they weren't, obviously dismissive or anything. So I was edified by that. Because sometimes you could roll in there as like, hey, I'm from the West, you know, or whatever. But I had a sense too that they were hungry, and they wanted to make the most out of this time and get what they could get. You know. All right. Was there any other points we left out?
It was a blessing. Thank you for saying yes. Thanks for coming, experiencing it, and contributing. And it was a great time.
It was, Your organization and just drive, determination is making that thing work. And, I confess, you willing to give it yourself and take a risk, and do it. So, thank you so much for the
Okay, thanks, Father Mark.